AMD's Ryzen 5000 CPUs are finally being more readily available and in stock, but should you still get them? Has anything come out from Intel? Is there any other competition? Let's talk about the best CPU that you can get today. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology. Some say every time you subscribe and smash that like button, the CPU situation gets better and better, and unfortunately the GPU situation really doesn't seem to be improving at all. So let's forget GPUs and talk about CPUs. Good news here is that MSRP prices are actually pretty good and a lot of them are available, and mostly I'm talking about the Ryzen 5000. If you walk into any micro center now, or at least most in the country, you'll be able to find a 5600X, 5800X, and in most places like my local one even has 25 plus of the 5950X as well as the 5900X, both of which the higher end CPUs have been very difficult to find. And of course Intel CPUs have also been in stock for most of the time. The higher end ones aren't as good, but we're going to talk about why you should consider maybe some of the more entry level CPUs. So first, let's talk about sort of the entry level going almost into the higher end. That's going to be the 5600X, 5800X. These are going to be pretty much your best choices, but don't forget about the Intel counterparts. The 11th generation Intel has been a little bit confusing for a lot of people. The high-end ones like the 11900K really shouldn't bother with. They were not really that much better than last generation, but the two Intel CPUs that you do want to keep your eye on and consider versus AMD is going to be the 11400 and the 11600K. Those are going to be some of the most price competitive, sometimes going to be a little bit cheaper than AMD, and they're going to provide as good, if not a little better in some cases, performance. Now, overall, if you're using something like a 3070, 2080 Ti, anything that is just basically going to be used for gaming, I still think 5600X is an absolutely stellar CPU. It even goes on sale sometimes for $279, and like we said, it's more readily available. 5800X is 8-core, 16-thread. It's a great CPU, but keep in mind it's going to, of course, have a higher TDP. That means that it also has more heat. A lot of people had certain issues with certain CPUs. I did a video about this that was maybe a little controversial, but it is true. The 5800X, while I still think it's a great CPU, the way it's designed, it definitely generates more heat in terms of, like, if you compare it to something like a 5600X with a much lower TDP, it's just 8 core, 16 threads, so it's a lot to pack in there. So just keep that in mind. You may need a little bit better cooling solution if you do something like that. But overall, 5600X certainly still, I think, is going to be one of my favorite for like a pure gaming system. And don't forget the 11600K. It's priced under the 5600X and gives you pretty good performance as well. Now, if you want to step up to the next level of CPU, 59 and 5950X are going to be the best ones on the market right now. Intel really doesn't have anything to compete with that. The 10900K is previous gen. The 5900X is considerably better, more cores, and it seems to outperform it in gaming. Not to mention the newer 11900K is definitely a big disappointment. So having that, some of these CPUs are now in stock at MSRP or pretty close. I think at Micro Center some of them were $50 over what the MSRP was. These are going to be the two best CPUs. If you're doing purely gaming, 5900X is your best bet. If you're doing gaming and some workstation use, I would go for the 5950X. My opinion, I think that's basically the best CPU out on the market right now. Of course, if you're doing higher end workstation type uses, Threadripper still is the dominant CPU. Intel does have its Xeon, and even they recently released more scalable Xeon processors. Those can be interesting for certain use cases if it's something that really is going to match your workflow or whatever apps you may use. But it's no doubt that Threadripper and Threadripper Pro just have really, really superior performance in most cases for sort of the prosumer or somebody who has a workstation at home. Maybe you do video editing or rendering or something like that. Threadripper is definitely fantastic. My favorite one, and the one that I use, is the 3960X 24-core Threadripper. I think that's the sweet spot of performance as well as price. They do tend to get a little bit pricier as you go up to even the 60-core model. Now, it may be expensive for most people that just want sort of a regular workstation, but it's still priced well considering what some Xeons were priced like. And if you actually have something that you need 64 cores, I think from the looks of it, it's actually a very good price for the performance that you're getting. but I still think the best value sort of performance for the dollar, still the 3960X and possibly the 3970X. And some of these new Pro Threadrippers, they tend to be a little more expensive, so I still think the 3960 or 3970 really will be your best bang for the buck. So to summarize, these CPUs are now much more readily available. The Intel ones pretty much always were, but AMD 5000, which is what a lot of people were interested in, you can actually go into a store and find it. Online they've been more available. Even Amazon will have the 5600 and 5800X readily available at MSRP. Sometimes they may be a little above, sometimes below. The 59 and the 5950X, they do have it in Micro Center stores, and it's also been popping up more frequently online, but those, because they've been so hard to get, they still maintain a little bit of a difficulty sometimes to get them if you're going purely online. But if you're lucky enough to be near a local store, local Micro Center, you can certainly pick one of these up today. They have a considerable amount in stock, which is definitely good news because everything has been perpetually out of stock with GPUs and even CPUs a few months ago. So it's good to finally see these in stock and at MSRP, so that way you can at least upgrade that part of your PC while you wait for GPUs and different things of that nature. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video, just a brief look at sort of the current CPU situation. Let me know what you think if you have any questions down below, and I'll see you guys on the next video.